Hi, everyone. John Michael Coppola here, and welcome to the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast, where we chat with the actors, directors, choreographers, designers, producers, music directors, lyricists, playwrights, and all the artists who make the Chicago area theaters come alive. We're so excited to have you here with us today. But before we get started, we just want to remind you to please like, subscribe to, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues who you think would appreciate the conversations we're having. We'd be so grateful for your support in this way so we can continue to bring these stories for years to come. Thanks again for being here, and now, curtain up on today's episode. Today's guest holds a Doctorate of Music from Northwestern University and is a very busy music director, composer, conductor, pianist, and vocal coach residing in Chicago, who also works in LA, New York, London, and New Zealand. Currently the resident music director for Norwegian Cruise Line's production of Choir of Man, a position he also held for the Chicago resident production. He was also the music director and conductor of Porchlight Theater's Titanique, which ran at Chicago's Broadway Playhouse. He also is the music director of this year's Joseph Jefferson Awards, an award he received for Best Musical Direction of Boho Theater's Big Fish in 2019. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Michael McBride. Now let's go to the top of the show. Hi, Michael. How you doing?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for joining me here on the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. So, I always like to start our podcast episodes the same way with all my guests, and that is to ask you to please tell our listeners where you're from, a little bit about your background, a little bit about your training, but most importantly, your first theater experience. But you can go chronologically with that information.
Thank you so much, first of all, for having me on this podcast. What you do is incredible, and to be able to highlight the artists in Chicago is something that is just really long overdue, and I'm really glad that Chicago artists get that platform. So I really appreciate what you're doing. So I grew up originally in Maryland and a bit in Texas, and came to the Chicago area for school. So I started playing piano when I was about 6 years old, taking piano lessons from the nice old lady down the street who gave me candy. And I'm not saying that's the only motivation, but the candy did help. And my first 5 years of piano was actually all playing by ear. It was a method called Suzuki method. So I was really invested in the emotional aspect of the music, and my teacher would demonstrate the pieces on the piano, and then I would copy her. But I really wasn't learning music by ear or by sight. So when I was about 12 years old, our family moved from Texas to Maryland, and we couldn't find a piano teacher that taught in that same way. Matched with this new piano teacher who was just abhorred that I didn't know how to read music. I was 12 years old or so. Still playing very complicated pieces of music, but just didn't know how to read. So she decided to back me up into like baby books, to kind of take it from the beginning. And of course, I was a teenager that was too cool and hated reading from these books that had like dancing pink hippopotamuses on it. But nevertheless, the thing that got me through that moment was my mother saw that I was really into musical theater at that time. And she decided to get me these Disney vocal selection books. And that was in the heyday of Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King and Pocahontas. And so she got me these books, and she just gave it to me, and I would read them cover to cover all day. And I credit that with not only teaching me how to read music, but also giving me an introduction into the world of musical theater, which is like the direct line of why I'm here today. So grateful for that. Came from Maryland for school, went to Wheaton College in the Western Burbs for my undergraduate in piano performance, and I had to convince them to let me add a composition major as well, and then continued on a master's in composition and doctorate in composition from Northwestern University.
Tell me about some of the influential people in your life that you can credit to your success today. It might be your original piano teacher or your mom, or there may be someone different. I'm curious about that trajectory.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, of course, my mother, had that foresight. I think also my father as well. He would always sit down with me at the piano and listen to me practice, but also like teach me how to practice.
Were they
He
musicians?
himself
Were they both musicians?
we say, well, my father played clarinet when he was younger, and he actually just picked his clarinet back up. He's 77 years old and he plays in the community band.
Love
I
that.
was just there a few months ago and I got to go to a rehearsal. It was just so cool to see him like at this point in his life following music. And my mother, we say she likes to play percussion in that she comes to a recital and she claps for us.
We all need moms
Um,
there.
Yeah, very always very encouraging.
That's right.
Um, and driving to lessons and would always emphasize the fact of you have to follow your passion, kind of regardless. That's the most important thing.
That's incredible. Now I want to go back to the Suzuki method. I'm familiar with it. Um, so when you say you learn by ear, obviously you're not reading the music. You don't learn any theory then, I guess, either. You just learn what the notes are, and then you just sort of like figure out the chords. Eventually, do you get to just know by ear, oh, that's A major seventh, and you just play that? I mean, give me a little bit more insight to that, because I'm fascinated by that.
That method is really based on what they call the mother tongue approach. And
Okay.
they try to base it on the way that babies learn language. So you speak to your baby, they copy you. They may not understand what they're saying, but they're copying the sounds and they're learning from the context, of the conversation. And so, a baby may not know how to diagram a sentence, but they still know how to communicate, how to ask for what they want.
Okay.
So they really follow that approach, but with music. So you're right. I didn't understand at the time that I was playing an A minor seven or that this was, a lower chromatic neighbor tone. But I did understand the emotional context of the music and, what that underlying heartbeat of the music was all about.
Okay.
So it wasn't until later that I got into, reading music and,
Right.
I am a music theory nerd, so I love all of that. But that came later, I think, once I had connected with the emotional content of music.
Wow. I started taking lessons when I was younger, and then, but it was the traditional lessons with learning the notes and the circle of fifths and all that stuff. And I was just bored to tears, and I gave it up. To this day, I sort of regret that. Um, and then I took theory in college, and I was like, okay, I got a little bit more education there. But and now I can read notes and understand the time signatures, and I can get my way through a page of music fine, not to play it but to sing it, or to explain like what I'm looking for, if to a vocal coach, or if I'm working with my music director for my group. But it's one of those things that I wish that I hadn't given up playing piano, or really deep diving and learning music better so that I could play an instrument. I mean, I sing, I know that's my instrument,
Yeah.
but I find it, and plus then you see all this modern day scientific stuff like, oh, when you play piano using this part of your brain and using this part of your brain, it's like, it's really great for brain functionality. I'm like, oh man, I really did myself in by giving a piano lesson so early in my lifetime.
Don't
So
don't take too much credit away from yourself. You're doing just great.
oh, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I'll put a
I
little pat on
like
my back.
thinking of this analogy. It's kind of like a circle, in which when you're at the top of the circle, you don't know anything about music, but you love it. And you think, oh, I want to devote more of my life to this. Let's be curious. And so you start traveling around the circle, learning about music. But for a lot of people, it gradually takes them further away from that initial love of the music. And most people quit when they get to the bottom of the circle, when they learn about halfway what they need to know, but they're the furthest away from that emotional content. And I always tell my students, if they can just get past that hump, which for me was the Disney books that my mother gave me, that
Yeah.
helped me to get past that hump so that you're still learning about music, but then you gradually come back to the top of the circle where you're marrying the intellectual knowledge of music, but then you get to reconnect with that emotional connection.
That's probably a really great theory for really anything that you might have a passion for. Any suggestions on how one would get through a hump like that? Because it sounds like it'd be really challenging, like pulling your fingernails out. like you just don't want to do it, but you feel like, I like say like I hate going to the gym. I have got this extra weight that I'm never going to get rid of because I'm never going to go to the gym. But I know that if I eat a certain way, and I take some walks, I'll be okay. But like that's something that I could never push myself past, and maybe I'll get there someday. But do you have any tricks of the trade to help people pass that hump if they feel stuck?
I think the key is you have to connect with something that you genuinely love. So
Yes.
if that's within music, then if your piano teacher is giving you music that you don't enjoy but you know is good for you, like it's your vegetables,
Yeah.
then you need to find some other piece of music. Maybe it's Chapel Roan or Sabrina Carpenter,
Oh wow.
or something that you already know, and something that you already know what it sounds like, so that you can kind of be imagining like the full orchestration while you're playing your own part. And you're right. I think that is the case with a lot of things, with the gym as well. Like if you can find some sort of movement that you love and that you can enjoy doing, or maybe it's about community. So instead of going to the gym by yourself, you get a friend or you join a
Mm.
class where there's something else in it for you that helps you to get past that hump.
That's all really smart and really helpful advice. Appreciate that. So now you're an educator, you're a music director, you're a composer, you're a conductor. Which of those hats do you prefer to wear, or is it the one you're wearing at a certain point in time?
I think the through line for me is that I am always trying to focus on finding a way for people to shine, to empower people to shine. And whether that comes through as being an educator or a composer or a music director or a vocal coach, that all connects to that central idea of how can I help this person to achieve their goal and to help them feel like they are more capable than they realize that they could be. So I think for me, it's all the same. There are definitely different skills involved, and I was fortunately able to transfer a lot of skills over from, being a university music professor for 20 years, and also being a performer myself, moving into that world behind the table. But at the center, it's really about connecting with the person and understanding who they are and what they want, and finding a way to give them the tools or the strategies or the perspective to help them to achieve those goals.
I had a playwright on very recently, and they had his name is James Sherman. He's actually got a show opening at Northlight this past week, and he described the word playwright as being an old Elizabethan word, and it's spelled play, Wright, which is an old word meaning someone who would create something like a wheelwright. And so I sort of said to him at that time, it's really a noble thing to, because he said, what I do is I build opportunities, I build plays for people to act in. And I said to him, I think it's a really noble thing to create something and want people to want to do the thing that they want to do, like really help them find that little spark and the confidence to want to do it. So I commend you for putting that through line in your work, regardless of what hat you're wearing at that time. Let's talk about some of the shows you've done here in town. Actually, I know you're a Chicago-based artist, but you travel all over the place, and we're going to get to where you are in a second as well. Right now, and you're in the world. But most recently, you did Titanique for Porchlight. You also did Lord of the Rings, which of course is very, very popular because of the movies and the books. So let's go. We'll start with Lord of the Rings. That was a little further back. I mean, Lord of the Rings, that was a world premiere here in Chicago, or did it transfer over here? Give me a little bit more background on that, because I don't think I remember.
This is a musical that was originally created about 20 years ago.
Oh,
It first premiered in Toronto, like they did their out of town tryout in Toronto, and then they went to West End.
okay.
And it was massive. It
I
had a
heard.
cast of like 60 with aerial artists and 20 hydraulic lifts in the stage,
Oh,
a full orchestra under the stage of 50. It was just like it was actually at that time the most expensive production in West End history. And it eventually, I think because of the capitalization, they weren't able to recoup, and they did have to close before they recouped. And so it got this reputation of being infamously one of the largest flops in West End history at that
yikes.
time.
Yeah.
And it was massive. It's an adaptation of all three of the original trilogy of The Lord of the Rings.
Whew.
It lasted for three
How
hours and 45 minutes. It
I was
had
just going to
two
ask how long it was.
intermissions.
Wow. It's like an opera.
It was just huge, huge. Yeah, I mean, like the Wagner Ring cycle. And so for about 20 years, nobody would touch this show until I guess it was about 3 years ago. There's a small theater outside, about 2 hours outside of London, called the Watermill Playhouse. The artistic director is Paul Hart, and it is maybe they 150, 200 seats. And they have a very small kind of postage stamp size stage where, not a lot of wing space. I mean, no flies. It's kind of like a storefront theater here in Chicago. And they thought, hey, why don't we take this massive work and translate it to our space? They reached out to the producers and got permission to kind of do their own treatment, and also reached out to the original writer, and were able to do an adaptation of the script that cut it down to a very meager 3 hours and not 3 hours, 45
Oh my
minutes.
gosh. Ooh.
And they also transformed it into an actor musician show as well. So all of the actors are playing the instruments while acting and singing and dancing and fighting.
And fighting.
And fighting, yeah, all of the violence and the fight choreo. So
Yeah.
they're literally like there's a guy who's playing cello, and they fashioned this neck brace so that it hangs on the back of the person's neck while they're reaching forward and playing cello while walking, while moving, while dancing. It is one of the most remarkable things I had ever seen.
And
This production,
that was the small production that they did that
right.
for? Wow. Okay.
Right. So they did that in the UK. It was very successful. They extended multiple times. And then that's the production that came to Chicago Shakespeare Theater
Gotcha.
last summer. And the big experiment that they were trying to figure out with the production here in Chicago, which was the US premiere, was could you take that same sense of intimacy and story character focus from this adaptation and expand it a little bit into, Chicago Shakespeare is about 800 seats.
Yeah.
So like, what would it take, and what were the aspects that needed to be pumped up a little bit, and what were the parts of the show that you really had to maintain that closeness and intimacy? So I was brought in for the Chicago production. I was literally walking down the streets of New York while heading into going to see Titanique. So it all kind of pulls full circle,
Wow.
and got a call. What felt like out of the blue, I later learned about, a connection of a connection when it made a recommendation to literally got an offer in the moment. Are you available? Are you interested? And I, of course, said yes.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us about that connection. I mean, I'd love to hear the story about how the offer came to be, because I'm all about,
Mhm.
the universe opens itself up to you in ways you don't expect. And as they say, opportunity is just when preparation meets luck. I want to know how
Yeah.
you got that offer.
Yeah, it's the wild thing about being a music director is there are usually no auditions for these things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and cold call emails or sending your resume it often falls on deaf ears. So it's really these personal connections that we get to form that say, hey, I had a great experience working with this person. I think they would be right for this project. And so that was the case for this. One of the producers at CST at the time, Aslan France, was friends with Chris Pasternak, who you probably know as well.
I do.
And I had worked with Chris Pasternak on a few projects, Passing Strange at Theo Ubique, and then Chris's Birthday, the Belting for Life production. And so Chris was the one who passed my name off to Aslan, who then passed my name off to the other producers.
Gotcha. And did that, was that the same for Titanique? It was sort of a referral from someone to get that job. You were going to see it, so maybe you already had that in the pocket when you were there. I'm curious about that next contract for you.
I had known about Titanique from some friends who had seen it in New York, and they thought it was hysterical. And they said, "Michael, you have to see this production." And then I also knew a few people in the cast. Actually, one of the actors I worked with at Timberlake Playhouse then became one of the background vocalists in that production.
Oh, nice.
And then the one of the co-creators and the director, Ty Blue, he and I had been connected via social media for maybe 10 years at that time, not because of Titanic, but because it's just a small world. So then he was the one who reached out to me and asked for availability. And although with that project, I did have to go through a full interview process, and they asked me about my preparation process and who my favorite drag queen was, to make sure that I was a good fit for the skills and the culture of the show.
Sure, sure. So then, did that production was it produced partially by the New York producers here in Chicago? I know that Porchlight's name was sort of on as lead producer, but I'm that's a detail I'm not sure I'm clear about.
It is not. It is actually the first non-replica production of
Gotcha,
Titanic,
gotcha.
which also has replica productions. It's still going on in London. They just won 2 Oliviers. And then they produced Sydney and Paris and a Canadian tour. The production in Chicago was a collaboration between Porchlight Music Theater and Broadway in Chicago. So
Right.
those were the two kind of producing entities. They just happened to be able to get the director of all of those other productions, Ty Blue, to be a part of this production as a director.
Got it. Got it. And that's interesting that they sort of did mount replica productions in all these major cities and sort of bypassed Chicago. So bravo to Porchlight for bringing it here. Michael Weber's got insight for that type of stuff.
I am so grateful for Michael and just his insight. When he saw it in Chicago, he thought like, "Oh, this is going to be great," and um, the Chicago audience is really going to embrace it, which I'm thrilled that they did.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about the Jeff Awards. This is your first time musically directing the Jeff Awards.
This will be my first time directing the Equity Wing Jeff Awards, but I've
Gotcha.
MD'd the last 3 years for the non-equity wing.
I see. Gotcha. So tell me what the role is of the music director for the awards, because from what I remember, the performances are from the shows that already played Chicago, and one would think that the MDs for those productions would be the MD for the performances. But give me a little insight as to what your role as the music director is for the awards.
The MD director for the ceremony is really to be um, the central kind of organizing factor, and it looks a little different depending on the year and whether it's non-equity or equity. For the equity wing, because I'm part of the union CFM 10208, it's up to me and the rest of the band to actually play and perform all of the numbers along with the companies.
I see.
Whereas for the non-equity, we were not under the union contract, and then we were able to kind of pick and choose. So we still performed most of it, but there were a few productions that we were able to kind of bring in some of the original musicians.
I
But
see.
in addition to doing these production performances, which just sidebar, I think one of the coolest things that I love about this event is that I get to basically do like 7 shows in one night. And we have one day of rehearsals. It's very quick, but everybody is just so excited to be there and excited to see each other,
Yeah,
as it's really, the annual celebration of Chicago theater artists.
the theater prom, as many a guest has referenced it.
Oh, they come decked to the nines.
I know, I've seen it. Yeah. So now, as I mentioned earlier, I teased that you are not in Chicago during this interview. You are elsewhere. So give our listeners a little glimpse as to what you're currently working on and where you are.
I am currently in Tampa, Florida, and I am working for Norwegian Cruise Lines. There's a production of The Choir of Man that is coming over from West End. And actually, it was in Chicago last year, about a year and a half ago. And I was the resident music director of that. They flew me out to London to learn the show, and then we produced it in Chicago at the Apollo Theater, and it was just such a great experience. So the Choir of Man is a actor musician show that features nine male performers and male presenting performers, set in an English pub, and the music is pop contemporary music. So there's Guns N' Roses and Katy Perry and Adele and Simon and Garfunkel, and they are singing in this really tight 9-part vocal harmonies while playing their instruments, dancing on the bar, jumping up and down. There's an actual working beer
Tap?
spigot there, a tab on the stage, and there are times in the show that they invite the audience forward and they're passing out beer as well. So it's
Fantastic.
just experience a party. So they have been on Norwegian Cruise Lines for a few years now, and every 6 to 8 months they rotate in a new cast. And so I am here rehearsing their new cast that's going on to the encore ship.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like so much fun. Now, are they doing it in a theater or are they doing it in like one of the pub spaces of the ship?
Great question. This is actually one of their highest rated shows, and they are in it's in their main theater, but they have like retrofitted it to look like the pub.
Wow, that sounds like so much fun. Norwegian is last couple of years they've been really amping up their musical theater game. They've got a lot of the big shows on their ships: Jersey Boys, Hairspray, one of the other
Beetlejuice has been on it.
Beetlejuice, and there's another bio
Hmm.
musical that's on there too that I can't think of right now. Not Tina. Um, anyway, not that important, but
Yeah, yeah.
but it sounds like a super fun time, and it's what a nice project to continually be a part of and continue
Yeah.
the legacy with. Let's
Great.
move ahead to our little lightning round. So some of them are
Uh,
long-time Chicago arguments, and some of them are just fun little takeaways for our
Oh, this is going to be
listeners.
controversial.
No, not at all. Not at all. So first out, deep dish or thin crust, tavern style.
I usually have the tavern style, but the very first time I had deep dish, I choked on the cheese and almost died, but still ate the rest of the pizza.
Right. Well, I can see why tavern style is your go-to since then. Cubs or White Sox?
Cubs.
Fantastic. Do you have a favorite watering hole or post-show spot you like to visit after performances?
For me, it's more about the people than the place. So I'll go wherever the crowd needs to go.
I love
But I
that.
also don't mind just going home to my bed.
Yeah, that's the common answer as well. I find I'm seeing a trend here in Chicago. Uh, are there any TV shows, podcasts, albums, books that you're currently reading or listening to or watching that you'd like to share?
Well, my go to sleep show is now 30 Rock. Rewatching that, so I'm
Nice.
just snoozing to that.
Yeah.
I just listened to Sabrina Carpenter's new album and was just in love with the chord progressions and the lyrics. I think that's a lot of fun. I listen to a lot of podcasts that are about like taking songs apart, like listening to the stems and then putting it all together and learning about the history of that. So yeah, I think I kind of geek out. There's a bunch of podcasts that do that.
I'd love to get some of those names because I would love to hear those as well.
Absolutely.
So we've put the Jeffs aside. Tonys,
Yeah.
Oscars, Emmys, or Grammys?
Woo! I mean, can I throw in the VMAs or the AMAs as well?
If that's your preference, sure.
Yeah, okay. But of the three of those, I mean, I think I gotta be basic and just say the Oscars.
That's cool. What is one piece of advice that you've ever gotten that you like to offer others, particularly aspiring theater artists?
Yeah. Um, I think it's say yes to the gig that scares you, and you'll stretch yourself into it and grow a lot from it.
Oh, that's amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with your listeners? Anything you want to promote? Anything you want to bring up that we may not have mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've recently opened a teaching studio where I'm teaching privately for those who are interested in voice or audition prep or piano or conducting or about the business of musical theater as well. So over the last few months, since I've uh, uh, been since I've actually stepped away from teaching at the university because these music theater projects have grown to be too large, I've been able to kind of open this vocal studio, teaching studio, to still reconnect with people, and make sure that I'm, giving back.
That's amazing. So where can people find information about that online?
Yeah, so they can find my website at therealmcbride.com. And I'm also active on Instagram or other social medias at The Real McBride as well.
Thank you so much. So listen, I look forward to seeing you. I hope we get to run into you at the Jeffs. I'm going to be in the lobby, but I imagine maybe you'll mingle through and say hi to some friends. And you'll be there, of course, all day rehearsing as well. I'm not sure how early I'm going to get there. But
Okay,
I really want to
great.
thank you for your time coming here on the podcast and chatting with us a little bit. Thanks for joining us at the Chicago Theater Makers Podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Chicago Theater Makers Podcast is a production of Spirit Art LLC, and our podcast theme music is by Paul Langford. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the podcast, please drop us a note at our website, ChiTheaterMakersPodcast.com. That's ChiTheater, makers with an S, podcast.com. We hope you enjoyed spending time with us as much as we enjoyed spending it with you, and we'll see you on the board soon.